Okay, so it's a quick turnaround for us this week. I think the guys have really embraced the short week, and we're going as fast as we can to put the TCU game behind us and move on here to Charlotte. So as far as the Charlotte, we already kind of talked about TCU. As far as Charlotte goes, they're probably feeling about the same as we did. They were in a really competitive game there, late into the second quarter. Kind of as we were, and then it got away from a little bit against App State, kind of like our game did against TCU. So, sure both teams will be looking to rebound off of last week's games. And, this is a team that, again, has a lot of new faces, new coaching staff. We certainly looked at a lot of what they've done. Coach Alvin has done at Ohio U and some of the coaches that came with him from there. But they've also put together a staff that has some people that weren't from Ohio U, so it's a little bit to take in a shorter time span. But we knew what the schedule was, so we did some work on these guys in the off season as well. So they have a really explosive returner in Rutledge. He'd probably be one of the best ones that we faced this year. Obviously Harrell, quarterback, we know about him, and the offense that Coach Alvin, runs theirs. And also with Coach Fitch, similar to what they did at LSU. And so similar to some of the things that TCU did in terms of going no huddle and tempo and, getting the plays from the sideline based on the defensive looks, things like that. A lot of 11 personnel. Similar to what TCU did, not the same, but similar. And then defensively, this is a disruptive defense. They really try to, knock the offense back with negative plays, pressure, a lot of stunning up front. And so they just try to cause disruption, and they do a good job of that. They can get you into some long yardage situations, some 2nd and 10, some 3rd and 10s, and put a lot of pressure on you. But as I said, in the kicking game, Rutledge is the big guy in the return game. Boyd, who of course we had here, is a solid player. And, they play hard on special teams. So, overall, a good, well-balanced team that's picking up a new system and kind of finding their way. Like I said, maybe a little bit like we are.
We'll get started right here at front center.
Bill, Rob Ashley, Fayetteville Observer. Coming out of the film review, during the film review, what were your biggest points of emphasis with the team?
Yeah, well, look, give TCU credit now. That's a good football team, and they played well. But a lot of our problems were self-inflicted. The turnovers, we get two turnovers for touchdowns. Defensively, couldn't convert on a couple of 3rd and longs. Gave up a couple long runs that were just not well defended. So our special teams weren't particularly good either. Short punt and drop snap and so forth, blocked field goal or blocked extra point. We're lucky on that one. So. Just kind of in every area, things that we need to tighten up, and as I said, TCU is a really good football team. I think that some of our deficiencies got exposed, and we'll address them, and hopefully get them to a level that is a competitive level that they need to be at. Thank you.
Front row.
No Westcott Target 24/7. Of all the newness that comes for you with coaching in college, you're going to be coaching on Saturday in a place that holds 15,000. To me, is that the smallest venue you ever coached in, and how nice is it knowing that there's still newness for you at this point in your career to be able to go out there and coach in a place like that?
Thanks. Well, during the COVID year, we played in front of a couple hundred people in bigger stadiums. So, again, we control what we can control. So we control how we prepare, how we play, and however many people are or aren't there, and whatever the weather is, and all those things we have no control over. We can just control our preparation, our performance, our attitude, and how competitive we play, and that's what we're going to focus on. But whatever it is, it's we take the approach we can play anywhere, anytime, day, night, home, away, in a parking lot, in Ireland, in North Carolina, in California, wherever it is. Just we got to be ready to play when the games are scheduled. We'll control what we can control.
Back row.
Thanks.
Hey, Bill, Walter from WRAL. In the NFL, where the top levels of relatively flat, right, salary cap, you were known for scheming teams, I would say. Now that you've got one college game under your belt, how do you kind of view how that can work in college where the talent levels are so different and you can still scheme? Just kind of understand what I'm saying, like scheming versus talent, how it outweighs each other.
Well, I think as a coach, you always try to do what's best for your team, period, whatever that is. So you try to put the players in the best position you can put them in. That's your job as a coach. And so that's what I've always tried to do is give my players an opportunity to go out there and play well and do things that they're confident in doing and capable of doing. So I'd say based on Monday night, and I need to do a better job of that. But that's always the goal is to let the players win games, and we have to put them in position where they can be successful. And so we'll do that to the best of our ability.
Right, second row.
Bill Bryan, with WRL. What did you see at Gio when you went back and watched the tape? What is the condition of his injury, and how do you pick the starter for this week's game?
Yeah, I talked to Gio this morning. He's doing pretty good. So, look, we all have plays we'd like to have back from the game. Calls, plays, passes, tackles, you name it. You can't participate in a game like that and not feel like there's some things you could have done better or you'd like to do over again. So learn from those, move on, and get ready for Charlotte. And that's all we can control. We need to learn some lessons from what happened in the TCU game, but at the same time, there's nothing we can do about that one. It's over with, and we need to move on.
And anticipate them starting this game?
We'll see how it goes. We haven't practiced yet this week, so we'll see what things look like today when we get out there.
Second row on the left.
Aaron Beard, JP. You mentioned about getting better and technique, coaching, and all these things, but I'm curious, how do you address morale? I realize it's just one game, but I would imagine for the guys, it was kind of a shock to the system, the way things unfolded, and morale, confidence, those things, how you might address that.
Yeah, well, every day is an opportunity, and every game is an opportunity. So, we have a competitive group, and I'm sure we'll embrace each day we have to get better and improve, and on game days the opportunity to go out there and play.
Front row on the left, coach.
Adam Smith, inside Carolina.
Yeah.
Bill, from the other night, defensively, it seemed like a bit of a struggle to get a consistent pass rush for you guys. Like, what would be your overall philosophy in blitzing with this particular group of players that you have? And do you feel like you might have to just start adding guys to the mix to get more pressure?
Well, it's always hard to talk about rushing the passer when you're behind. It's a lot easier to rush the passer when you're ahead. So you get in a bunch of pass rush schemes when you're behind and they don't throw the ball. Then you just expose yourself to running plays and different gap blocking schemes and so forth that might not necessarily be good against some of those pass blitzes. So look, the best pass rush is when they're going to pass, and if you can dictate those situations, then that's when you should be able to put your best forward in terms of individual pass rushes and also scheme rushes based on their protection schemes. So when you're playing from behind, you don't get as many chances to rush a passer. You got to make them count. But even when you think you have them, they don't really have to throw because score in the situation.
Left, second row, please.
Hey, Coach. Do you feel the tempo of TCU's offense exposed some conditioning issues? And if they did, how do you address that this week?
Yeah, I think it was more their execution than the tempo. I don't think the tempo was that big of an issue. But they do a good job with it. And, we try to disguise things, but they, look at where we are and based on their formation and then try to pick out plays that, they feel like are good against what they're seeing from us. So it's a little bit of a cat and mouse game there. But it is what it is. And if that's the style that the offense wants to play, then we have to, play to that. It's what we expected. We'll definitely see some of that this week. But I think it's really more of the execution. I don't care what defense we play. We have to tackle better. We have to defeat blocks better. We've got to set the edge of the defense better on those off tackle and outside runs. So, and we can't get the ball thrown over our head. So if those things don't improve, then we'll be facing some of the same issues against any team. If we can fix some of those, then maybe we can play from ahead and have more opportunities to rush the passer.
Front row middle.
Andrew Jones, starting at 24/7. You mentioned a couple weeks ago when we had you in here that the evaluation process would continue into the season. With so much newness, so many new guys, it looked the other night that you guys were rolling a lot of dudes in early. How heavy are you still in the evaluation process with this team?
Yeah, I think some players are pretty well established. And I think there's others that, we're kind of trying to figure out what their roles are. And that could change from game to game regardless of what their skills are. It could be just the way we're playing the game or what we're doing in a particular, game plan strategy for that week. So there are a lot of roles that are still evolving on the team. Yes, no question about it. That'll probably continue for a while. Again, I always felt like in the NFL, you need about a third of the season, so call it, 5 to 6 games to really, know what your team really is. So, we're probably looking at, 4 or 5 games before we, feel real good about, the best group we can put out there. I think we're putting the best people we can out there right now, but that may change, and it could certainly change when some of the players get more comfortable, improve, get a little more playing time, gain more confidence. We'll just have to see how that goes. But clearly, some players have established themselves as the best players at their position, and I wouldn't expect any changes there.
If I can stay on that real fast, you finally had a chance to see your team against somebody else, a very good team. Did you get a lot of intel? You had an awful lot of intel for you and the staff based on what you saw the other night.
Yeah, as I said, I think that some of our deficiencies were certainly exposed by TCU. There were other things that were pretty competitive. We need to shore up the things that we need to shore up, and overall just some fundamental execution of just basic football snaps and catching the ball and tackling and finishing blocks and getting the proper depth on pass routes and all those things that are not we've done before. We know how to do them. We didn't do them consistently enough in the game. We need to be better at that.
Second row on the right here.
Bill, Dave Nathan with the Tar Heel Sports Network. When there's a sudden change opportunity in a game, whether it's a turnover or an injury, what are the best tactics to use in practice to prepare for those so everybody knows what to do in the moment?
Well, so we sprinkle those into practice, those sudden change situations, especially in training camp. But it's really a mentality for the players and the coaches, and especially the play callers, not to get into a rut, but something happens and changes things dramatically in a few seconds to be able to shift into the new situation. So we hit a long pass or they hit a long play, and now we're in the red area or they're on the goal line or whatever it is, or there's a turnover and you think they're going to punt and you're going to get the ball here and you get a turnover and now you get it in good field position, or vice versa. You think we're going to punt and we'll have them backed up and something happens and now you go in and they got the ball in the red zone. So we practice those situations during training camp and sprinkle them in during the season. But it's really a mentality to recognize quickly where we are, forget about how we got there, where we are, and what we need to do going forward.
Second row middle, 2 more here.
Shelby Swanson with the Raleigh News and Observer. I'm curious, you spoke today and you've spoken a lot about just Monday to the fundamentals and those not being where you want it to be. To what extent do you feel like that's a result of just so much of a roster overhaul, with bringing in 70 new guys, being so active in the spring transfer portal window, and are those fundamentals just in general where you would expect them or where you'd like them to be at this point in the season?
Yeah, I think it's more really a question of consistency. It isn't that they don't exist. I mean, there are plenty of plays where, we're doing things well and then the same fundamental will come up maybe a little bit later or maybe came up earlier and then we got it right. But just the overall consistency of, playing at, 60 or 70% efficiency versus playing at 90%. And, when you have 11 guys out there, if you have 1 or 2 that either it's a miscommunication or a lack of awareness or a slow to process some adjustment that we've made or a poor fundamental, and then you have 1 or 2 breakdowns, you can have 8 or 9 guys doing the right thing really well, and then if you have one mistake, it can blow up the whole play. So there was certainly plenty of those too, where there's a lot of things that were right, but one thing was wrong and it cost us. So we need more consistency, and, you know, we're working on that. We'll get better. But that's what we need to work on. It's not we don't know how to do it. It's not that we don't do it. There are just, you know, some breakdowns, and I'd say, you know, schematically, we need to, as a coaching staff, you know, do a better job of finding the things that each of our individuals players do well, and try to play more into their strengths as they become more apparent what those are, or conversely, you know, not put them in situations that aren't particularly favorable to them. Try to avoid those. We can do a better job of that too. So that part of that's on us.
Yeah, and then really quick, just to follow on that, as part of that too, just again, you said it might take 5-6 games or so for the.
Well, I said in the NFL, that's kind of what we were working with. You know, I'm not saying it takes you 6 games, but I'd say I felt like and if the question was about the NFL or related to the NFL, I said after about 6 games, I think you really know your team in the NFL. Like, this is who we are, and not too much is going to change going forward unless there's some dramatic injury or something. And then you kind of play to the strengths or weaknesses of that team. I'm not sure exactly how it's going to go here. I really don't know, but in that context, my experience was, you know, about a third of the season. So, you know, a third of the season, year, 3 or 4 games. You know, at some point, things will settle in where this is going to be, this is who we are, this is what we can do, this is what we're going to have trouble doing, you know, things like that. I don't think we're quite there yet. There's just not enough evidence.
Last one front row on the right here.
Bill, Michael Coe, WCHO, and JumpRunner.com. The short week is a unique challenge from Monday to Saturday, but do you feel after a game like Monday that it's actually a good thing that you can get back on the field and sort of flush that game as soon as possible?
Yeah, 100%. I agree with that. Yeah, I think we're all going to be anxious to play again. Yeah, better than sitting around 2 weeks, you know, feeling like we felt after that game. You got to move on anyway, right? And we moved on. We moved on yesterday, so here we are. It's Charlotte, but we have to recognize what things need to change in order for the results to change. But yeah, I think everybody will be excited to play Saturday. I don't think anybody wants to wait an extra week to get back on the field. Thanks.
Thank you, guys.
All right.
Thank you.